I have yet in my life to hear of a people who do not have a story to tell of how they came to be where they are. My people, the Choctaw, have two. The French, also my people, sent an explorer, Antoine Simon Lepage, down the Mississippi Valley in the 1750s. He recounted, "When I asked them from whence the Choctaw came, to express the suddenness of their appearance, they replied that they had come out of the earth at the sacred Naniwaya mound, which they shew between their nation and the Chickasaws. They tell us also that their neighbors were surprised at seeing a people rise at once out of the earth. Yes, I imagine they were." Another story told to the French was that the Choctaw, a great many winters ago, had commenced moving from the land where they then lived, which was a great distance to the west of the great river and the mountains of snow, and they were a great many years on their way. A medicine man led them the whole way, going before with a red pole, which he stuck in the ground each night where they encamped. This pole was found each morning leaning to the east, and the medicine man told them that they must continue east until the pole would stand upright in their encampment, and that there the Great Spirit had directed that they should live. Indeed, when the French explorer Pierre Limon led an exploration party down the Mississippi in 1698, they found a red pole, marking the boundary between the Choctaw and the Bayagula tribal hunting grounds. They named their settlement there after that traditional boundary stick from our legend, Baton Rouge, or Baton Rouge, or Red Stick, or 30-foot pole painted red and festooned with fish bones. In my white heritage, there is also a story of how we came to be where we are. The book of Genesis teaches us that the Lord created us in his own image and gave us dominion over a beautiful and eternal garden, which we lost due to our own actions and have spread across the face of the earth, seeking dominion over it ever since. In either tradition, the peoples I am descended from seek to hold land if they can, or take land if they can. Such was the situation in the year 1830. The people of my mother, the Choctaw, sought to hold the land in Mississippi that they had hunted, fished, cleared, settled, and farmed since planting the red pole generations before. The people of my father, the whites, sought not only to hold the land in Mississippi that they occupied, but, because they were so numerous, sought to expand into the land of the Choctaw. All across the states of the Southeast, this same scenario was playing itself out. White citizens of the United States becoming embroiled in conflict with the Indian nations. The ultimate end to this state of affairs, one trying to hold, one trying to take, could only be the effusion of blood. I trust no one is under any illusion as to who would prevail in such an effusion. And so, in that year, 1830, the United States Congress, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, passed the Indian Removal Act, authorizing the federal authority to treat with the Indian nations for their removal to federal territory west of the Mississippi River in exchange for their ancestral lands east of it. And who was the chief proponent of this act? Who was the driving force behind it? Who was the man so convinced this was for the Indian nation's own good, whether they had asked him or not? As a United States citizen, like yourselves, I know him as Old Hickory. But as a Choctaw in our fashion, I know him as Sharp Knife. Perhaps he would best be known as the sharp knife with an old hickory handle. Andrew Jackson, sometime general and president of the United States. The Choctaw know President Jackson. We've seen him as the sharp knife when fighting alongside him at Horseshoe Bend against the Creek Nation, or against the English at the Battle of New Orleans. We have seen him as hard as Old Hickory when we negotiated land treaties with him in 1820, and when seeing him negotiate with the other tribes. There should have been no Choctaw, and for that matter, no Chickasaw, no Creek, no Cherokee, no Seminole, who entertained the slightest doubt that President Jackson would ensure that removal treaties would be signed, freely or by force, and that the removal of the Indian nations would take place. Any chief who told his people differently was either lying, deluded, or selling something. I, as chief of the Choctaw people, chosen specifically to treat with the federal government on removal, was not lying, deluded, or selling something. The act was passed in May of 1830, and by September, 4 months later, the Choctaw had signed our treaty. I say to you now, in words clear, in words loud, we did not wish to remove. I say to you now, in words clear, in words loud, our wish did not matter. The people of the southern states whose votes put Andrew Jackson in office wished us removed, and the wishes of the electorate coincided with his wishes. Look at what resisting Old Hickory did for Chief John Ross and the Cherokee. Look at what resisting the Sharp Knife did for the Seminole. I secured for my people, by the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, 15 million acres of land, 4 million more than the 11 million our nation occupied in Mississippi. I secured the best easternmost land of the Indian Territory, wooded with fertile valleys and meadows touching the Red River. Choctaw who wished to remain in Mississippi could do so and receive their own land after becoming United States citizens. In fine, I secured the best for the Choctaw, better terms than any other nation achieved. And I make no apology. The nation removed in 3 groups, the first in 1831, the second in 1832, and the last in 1833. There were many deaths from cholera among that first group that began their journey in 31 and ended in 32. These deaths caused those on the journey to refer to their path as a trail of tears. The second 2 waves had no pestilence and no deaths caused by the journey. Perhaps there are those who would say to me, see how your people were made to suffer by your treaty agreeing to removal? See how they died of pestilence because of their journey? Perhaps I would say there was a plague of cholera breaking out across North America and Europe throughout 1831 and 32. Thousands upon thousands died. You say my people contracted the pestilence because of their journey. Who is to say they would not have contracted it without a journey? But of this, I will assure you. Had we resisted removal, had we not been willing to move from old lands to new, all would be dead. And the going would be just as painful and as tragic as cholera, but more drawn out, with death being by bullet and knife and fire and starvation and taking years. You may ask, the Calusa, the Adesto, the Yamasi, the Corey, the Pascagoula, if this is true. But you will need a shovel.